and welcome to Friday Friends. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Carly, and we're Next Chapter Home Team.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We're here this week with Nick Amlin from Amlin Auctions. Nick, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Why don't we start with telling us a little bit about Amlin Auctions, about your company.
Awesome. Yeah, so Amlin Auctions, we're a family-owned auction company. We're based out of Holland, Ohio. I personally run Key Realty's auction department. I work with my dad as well as my brother. My dad runs Danbury Realtors auction department, and my brother runs Remax auction department. We've been in business since 1996. And we just specialize mostly in real estate auctions. We do personal property auctions, business liquidations, you name it, we sell it, storage units, a little bit of everything. We're licensed in Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. We try to be the one-stop shop for sellers to kind of help them out if that's what they need.
And today you're here to talk to us about 5 misconceptions about auctions.
Yeah, the 5 misconceptions about auctions. That people hear the word auction and they think it's such a scary thing, so there are a ton of misconceptions. The 5 I would say is that 1, it's a last resort. It never is. 2, it's that it's only for distressed properties, which it's definitely not. Number 3 is that it is only for foreclosure properties, which is also completely untrue. 4 is that they are risky for the buyer, which they are definitely not, and I'll touch on that. Number 5 is that they are only cash transactions, which is definitely not true as well.
All right, Nick, let's talk a little bit more then why these are misconceptions. Let's help break them down.
Yeah, so the first one that I touch on is that auctions are a last resort. Auctions are simply just a different way of marketing. We are considered a faster, accelerated marketing program, and it is just easier on the seller and most times the buyer. It's just a different way of doing it. It is definitely not a last resort. It can be faster than traditional real estate. It really just depends on the seller's situation and kind of what they need.
And that kind of goes into the distressed properties. A lot of people think they're only for distressed properties, but I've been to plenty of auctions that are not. What are some other types of properties you typically auction off?
Definitely. People, again, they hear the word auction and they think it's only for the distressed and the investment type properties, which oftentimes can be a great auction, but at the same time, we sell luxury homes. It really opens the pool up to a ton of buyers, and then it gets them competing against each other, and oftentimes, it brings the most price. With all of the multiple offer situations that we've been going on, it really levels the playing field, puts everybody on the same terms, and then gets them competing against each other. The most expensive homes are sold via the auction method. The most expensive car auctions, or auctions obviously, horse auctions, the whole 9, fine art sold at auction. So, it's not only for the distressed property. We closed 175 properties this year, and I would say the majority of them are what I would consider move-in ready, not distressed.
So the misconception that you kind of covered, they're not foreclosures.
Exactly.
They're homes that people need to sell, and just a different method of doing it.
Yeah, another huge misconception, the foreclosures. The share of sale is a very popular type of auction where they are foreclosures, and that is called a buyer beware auction, where the buyer is assuming all liens, any back taxes. That is the buyer's issue. With Amlin Auctions and the auctions that we do, that is untrue. All of our auctions are sold with a free and clear title. All liens are paid up at closing. All back taxes are paid up at closing, extremely similar to a traditional real estate. Amlin Auctions, we do not do any foreclosure property. That's a huge misconception that you will be getting a free and clear title if you're buying from our auctions.
That definitely goes into the next one about it being risky for buyers, because at share of sale, you're buying, sometimes you're not even sure what. So how are yours slightly different in that they're not as risky for buyers?
We sell all of our properties as is. They're not sold subject to inspections, financing, or appraisals, okay? But we do a preview period, typically 2 hours before every auction. In that period, that is your inspection window. So you could bring an inspector with you to the auction, you could bring a contractor, you can bring whoever you'd like. That is your window. You're not buying it sight unseen. There is that preview time where you can, go through, look at the mechanicals, check everything out. It's typically a 2-hour window that we do with our auction. So it's never sight unseen, it's never buyer beware. So it really takes a lot of the risk out of it.
So it's not conditioned on financing.
Correct.
But you also mentioned that auctions aren't necessarily all cash.
Exactly.
How does that work?
A lot of people think that they are all cash purchases. Now, we do not sell them subject to financing, but you are able to get financing. We always recommend that buyers are working with a reputable lender. Typically, we try to recommend that they are conventional financing. A lot of our properties that we sell do get financing. Now, what I will say at the same time, since it is not sold subject to that financing, if you are unable to close on the property because of financing issues, you will forfeit your earnest money deposit. That's another difference with auctions, is that we require a set number down for an earnest money deposit, typically $5,000 or $10,000 down the night of the auction. You know, knock on wood, we don't hardly ever take anybody's earnest money deposit. That's not what we're here to do. But if you are working with a reputable lender, you got a good chunk down, you're getting conventional, you're a solid buyer, you definitely can buy at the auction properties. If a buyer were to come to one of our auctions and say, you know, I got pre-approved with ABC online last night, you know, we're gonna say, hey, you really ought not bid on this auction if you're not, you know, dead set on it, and make that very clear. But at the same hand, a lot of our properties do get financing.
So essentially, sellers shouldn't be worried that they're going to give their house away.
Yeah, definitely. Another huge misconception, I feel like I'm saying that over and over, but sellers often hear the word auction and they think, oh, it's a great deal, I'm going to be giving my house away, it's going to sell for nothing. So yeah, with Amlin Auctions, we have 3 types of auctions that we do for real estate: the absolute auction, the minimum bid auction, and the reserve auction. The absolute auction, that means it is absolutely going to sell to the highest bidder. There's no minimum bid and there's no reserve. It is the scariest type of auction, but at the same time, it brings out the most amount of people because everybody thinks they're going to get a good deal. Then that typically means there's more competition, which often brings the highest price. That's very good for the, you know, farmland, very good for the investment type properties. Again, it really depends on the seller situation. The second type of auction, the minimum bid auction, which is probably our most popular auction, is where we set a minimum price and advertise that price. That is our reserve. So for example, you know, a minimum bid of $99,000, we're going to start right at $99,000 and go up from there. That's the most popular because it gives your sellers, you know, a safety net for, hey, this is where we're going to start. It's definitely not going less than that. We talk to the sellers about that. The last one's going to be the reserve auction. That's where the sellers reserve the right to accept or decline the final bid. So if it's where they wanted it to be, they can accept it and we can sell it at that point. If it's not, then they can, you know, hold off on the auction and we can kind of go back to the drawing board.
Well, those are definitely some good
Safety nets.
yes, and you know, good information for sellers and buyers,
Yeah.
because sellers often think, well, I don't want to sell my house at an auction, I'm not going to get anything for it, and buyers are like, well, I'm going to end up buying a dump, I don't want to buy it. I actually felt in 2020 and 2021, I was like, well, almost everything's an auction. You know, you put it on the market and that was the minimum bid, and then we had multiple offers.
Exactly.
Oftentimes, and it was like, oh, well, this just feels like an auction anyway.
And with the auction, you know, touching on the multiple offers situations that are going on and still going on, the auction process really levels the playing field. You put everybody on the same terms and conditions, and it makes it transparent. You know, with the multiple offer situation, did I lose out by $500? Did I lose out by $10,000? You don't know. With the live auction, you are seeing who's bidding against you. It's transparent, and you know whether or not you win the final bid. You can go home that night and say, hey, you know what? I saw that they were bidding against me. They got it for $1,000 more or $5,000 more, and I wasn't willing to go. It really makes it transparent.
Awesome. It's really excellent information for buyers and sellers.